OTAN, Outreach and Technical Assistance Network.
Good morning, everyone. Wonderful to see you. My name is Karen DeVaron. I am the Canvas lead here at OTAN with Technology Projects, and I'm so excited that you're here and here to be with Lynn, who is a very talented person and has been an administrator, an English teacher, and has worked and is now working at CDCR. And so she's just got such a depth and breadth of experience. And I know for me as a practitioner that it always means a lot to me, and it makes it more credible when others like myself, who is a practitioner, step up and present, because we know that she understands both our adult education, adult educators, and adult learners. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Lynn.
Hey everyone. So yeah, as Karen said, I'm currently an administrator with the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. I've been with the department 5 years. I started as a site-based administrator, so the equivalent of a principal at an adult school, and then moved up to what our equivalent of the district office would be. And before that, I spent many years in a large local school district as a site-based administrator, a teacher, and then eventually a district level administrator. And my background in Canvas sort of is much like your own, trial by fire. March 2020 came around. We hadn't used any sort of online learning management system at all. And then suddenly overnight, we had to do it. And the dynamic that shifted in that carried with me when I came to CDCR, because we were a little bit later than the rest of the world, both in coming out of restrictions from COVID and embracing the need to provide materials to our learners, our staff, and our community in a digital format. So I really brought Canvas up to speed where it is now in CDCR, and am helping them sort of look forward to what it means to provide very flexible learning experiences. So whereas an adult school, your learners come, they voluntarily show up to do their work with you, they enroll in their programs, and they have an objective. Our students are a little different in that they neither have the opportunity to determine when and how they can attend. And in many cases, they don't have an opportunity to choose the programs that they're in. So engaging them and making sure that they are informed as to why it's important that they be involved and engaged is a little different for us. So that's where kind of my background comes from, and where this came from, and why I learned to use Canvas in a way to communicate that maybe you use and maybe you don't. But I just wanted to put together some time to talk to folks about what the features are. This is a kind of an entry level, and then a little bit more advanced on how to communicate with Canvas, but put together some training that either reminds you of what you knew and haven't used in a while, or gives you some new tools. So without further ado, I'm going to try and find out why. There we go. Okay. So it's a 90-minute training. It's a small group today, so I don't know that it will take us that long. But this first part is just the foundations of Canvas communications. We're going to talk about how to leverage Canvas as a communications tool beyond just sending some text that tells someone something that they need to do. I am a person who is always, a believer in multimodal communication, and Canvas is just one tool in a toolbox that you as an administrator have to work with your school. Many times we look at what we have and we get kind of in a rut on things, and we say, oh, Canvas is just for this. But I want to remind you of some ways that you can use Canvas that really honestly will make it a little more fun for you and your different learner groups and your different faculty groups, however you look at your school community, and how you can tailor messages that help them want to be in your space. Um, you are the ones that establish, as we've all heard, the culture of your schools, and how you communicate with your different stakeholder groups. So if your communication style is the same, you're probably not reaching all of your stakeholder groups at the level that you need to. And so this is also a way that you can learn to tailor some messages to meet those groups' needs, and really get them coming back. So before we go too far into things, I'm going to kind of tell you our objectives for today. You're going to learn to create and manage announcements for school-wide, community-wide, and course-specific information. We're going to talk about setting up and moderating discussion boards that can foster some community and school engagement, both with your learners and with your faculty. And how you can utilize the Canvas inbox to make sure that when you're talking to your stakeholder groups, you're doing it in an efficient way, personalized to what they need, and getting the message to the group as they need it and when they need it. Okay, so before we go into how we use each of our tools, let's talk about our target audiences. We're putting this out as a school-wide communication tool, but we all know, again, that we have different target audiences that need different messages. Faculty, for example, don't need the same information that students need. Often you're communicating with your faculty about sensitive topics, confidential topics. Maybe you're scheduling meetings or professional development. Maybe you're just informing them of some upcoming events and asking for their participation. Your faculty need a different approach. And often our faculty get bombarded with email, one email after another, and pretty soon they're just not engaged. They're not paying attention to what's coming at them. And you have to send that message 2 or 3 times, go out and see them face to face. Hey, did you see this? And hopefully if we can learn to put together some Canvas messaging to meet their needs, they can see those messages as some interesting things that they want to participate with, and some engaging information that really keeps them aware of what's happening in the school and draws them in as teacher leaders to have ideas and share with you, and see that you as an administrator are really interested in their engagement in your school. Now, Canvas for students, that's a little bit more of an interesting one, because students look at Canvas as a classroom, right? If we look at Canvas as a whole, it's our virtual school, and the students see it as a classroom. And in a classroom, they learn what they need to do, they do it, and they wait for feedback. And it's very difficult to engage students, particularly adult learners, in a digital space if all you're throwing at them is words. Because pretty soon, whether it's a language barrier or just fatigue from working a job and coming to school and trying to manage life events, words get tiring. So we need to find a way to engage them that doesn't just throw a bunch of words at them and expect that they've read, complied, paid attention, and moved on. So as an administrator, again, you're setting the tone for your school on how you communicate with students. Same with families and others who might be observing what students are doing. If you have outside stakeholders that are the families of your students, or people that are in your community that are in your Canvas instance, that you want to engage in a different manner, they're not going to need the same level of communication as the faculty and the students. It's going to be different. And you all know this, but we want to make sure that you're able to use Canvas to communicate differently with those groups, and set yourself up as an administrator who's open and ready to hear what they have to say, ready to communicate with them, ready to maybe have a little fun. Some of what we're going to do in the announcement section, for example, is just having a little fun. Back in the day, what we did was, and this is probably dating me, school newsletters, and we did a lot of paper. And the principal would have their principal corner, and they would publish a little bit of information, and that would go out to the school community. And then we came into the digital space and we put together websites, and then the school corner was there for the principal to put up what they wanted, and the administrators would have a little newsletter they would put up and talk about what was going on. But that's very static, and that's assuming that everyone goes to your website and has a look. The key with Canvas and the benefit to Canvas is they go there. They go there, and they're logging in, and that you can see the metrics for when your students are engaged, and that you can put a message out there that they will see. And so using that in that dynamic space, instead of just, well, once a month I throw up a new newsletter, I think is really an engaging way to make sure that you as a human being are known to your groups, that they can see your personality a little and how you communicate, and that they can understand what's going on and know that you're there for them and you're going to give them all the information they need, and they have a way to get back to you if they need to. Now, Karen's going to be moderating the chat while we go through this. I can't see it because I'm on a single screen and communicating kind of blind. So if there are questions, Karen, please just stop me if there's something that I need to answer. Otherwise, Karen will be moderating the chat for us today.
We are just chatting in the box about remembering I had to hide passwords in my messages to staff to see if people read it back in those paper trail days. And we're having some folks that are also remembering those days. So I think what you're doing is activating prior knowledge for all of us.
Perfect. That's funny. We used to do the same thing, right? Something at the bottom, and you do that with your students. I mean, you hear the stories of the teachers who put together the list of instructions, and the last thing is, if you read these instructions, just write your name on the paper and turn it in. And is that true? I don't know. I never did that to my students, but I imagine, because especially with adults, we scan, right? We scan to get to what we need, and we don't spend a lot of time with it. And often that it denies us the opportunity to have all of the information that we need, but at the same time, the experience of getting to know the person that's communicating with us kind of goes out the window. I know that there are quite a few people who have a different style, a much more engaging style when they're in person with someone. And then when they write, it's very formal, right? And if you don't have the opportunity to engage with that person, if that's an administrator, and I'll just give you a little bit of our background in corrections. If that's an administrator who really has 3 small schools in one, and it's a mile between those locations, you're not going to see that administrator as regularly as you might. And you start to think that that formal communication is that person. And so Canvas can give you a way to communicate with your groups that, you know, allows you to be a little different, allows you to be someone who maybe sends out a message that just is something interesting that you wanted to tell them. And maybe you send out something that is of entertainment sake, or something just to grab them, right? Let them know who you are. If you have interests, if you have inspirational quotes, I know that's kind of a worn out trope, but just something that can set you up to engage with those folks that you may not see every day. At my school, for example, when I was at Solano, our schools are about a quarter to a third of a mile apart. Different yards in a prison can't communicate with one another. So we have teachers who will teach months without seeing their colleagues. And so being purposeful to go down there and talk to them and share with them before the digital tools were available, it was a lot of time. So, as a principal, to get to all of my faculty and spend meaningful time with them was very, very difficult. Canvas doesn't replace that. I'm not trying to say that this is your answer for everything and it's going to replace any need you have to be face to face with them. It's just one more tool in your toolbox. So why would you use it? Well, it's a centralized communication hub. It's a way for you to make sure that you're reaching everyone that you need to reach. You're not missing anyone. You can set up different groups, different faculty groups, different student groups. You can communicate on a user-wide basis. You can communicate with specific groups. You can communicate with specific classes. And the way that you set those groups up really matters, because then when you're going in to send that morning message, or you're going to send the notification that your graduation is coming up and you want everyone to see it, you can make sure that those specific groups get it. If you're using PLCs at your school and you set up PLC groups, you can make sure that the PLC groups are getting the specific information, or specific professional development. There are many, many ways to organize your groups in Canvas that will allow you to centralize your communication, give consistent messages to the groups that need them, even give consistent messages in terms of dates and times of the week that you send the messages, and track the communications. Now, I want to say a little bit about tracking communications, because when you're tracking communication in Canvas, there are a couple of ways that's done, and the most granular can be done in a course. As an administrator, you can't track if all of your users have looked at a specific message, but if you're in a course, you sure can. If you send a message through a course, you can go in and look at what those users have seen, when they saw it, how long they spent. So if as an administrator, and this is just one thing I'm going to throw out there, you set yourself up with a shell, a Canvas shell that includes all of your user groups, you can track communication. Now, do you have to do that? You don't. You can always just send as an administrator school-wide communications, but also you can do it a little differently by setting up your own Canvas shell that allows you to host discussions with your faculty, allows you to send announcements in a different and more targeted way, and really sets you up to have a space where you can communicate with the people at your school in a little bit of a different way. One second. Computer screen's gone off. Okay. So integrating with existing systems. Now, this is something that I can't show you because the CDCR option does not allow us to do this, but Canvas is able to integrate with Teams, it's able to integrate with outside email systems, it's able to integrate with a number of student information systems that are off the shelf, Starfish, for example, which is used in college, and it can send information from one system to another. One of the built-in fundamental things that Canvas does is anytime you send a discussion, anytime you send an announcement, anytime there's an inbox message, there is a way that Canvas notifies the user email address associated with each of the accounts that your users have. So they do get, hey, there's an announcement that you need to see. Hey, there's a discussion board post. There's a reply to your post. They're going to get all of that information unless they turn those notifications off. So your job as an administrator is to make sure they don't turn those notifications off because all they're getting is bombarded with messages that either don't apply to them or really just don't engage them. So our end goal is to make sure that, hey, I'm an English teacher and there's a notification that my administrator just posted an announcement. I better go see what that is because I'm going to enjoy reading it, or it's going to have important information and it's going to be presented in a way that I need it to be presented to get to me. And the last bit of this is multimodal options. That's probably my favorite thing with some of the ways to communicate in Canvas is it's not just text. You can include other types of interactive information. You can include different types of formatting, and you can make your personality come through in some of the communication tools that Canvas allows us to use. Okay, so today we're going to talk about 3 different ways to communicate. There are more, but in the space of time that we have today, we're going to focus on 3. We're going to focus on announcements, discussion boards, and a brief discussion of the Canvas inbox. Each of these is going to be separated out into space for you to either go into your own Canvas and play around or follow me while I'm in my Canvas and working in some of the things that I'm going to show you. If you've got your Canvas up and going, I do encourage you to go in and play with some of the things that we're talking about, particularly in the announcements section. Because we're going to talk about some ways to put some multimedia stuff in there and how to make an announcement a little more than just what you see here on the screen, which is some words that mean very little to people once they've seen this same thing semester after semester. One thing I'll caution you about, unless you really mean to send it, please be careful. Cancel out of your message if you do go into your own Canvas, and I'm going to do the same. A funny story I'll share with you all is that back when we launched our first Canvas instances at 7 different institutions in our system, one of the things that we had to do was start at ground zero. And so we went out and we taught our faculty and our site administrators how to make announcements to all of their students. Now, keep in mind, we're talking about people who've had very little access to computers that are the actual administrators and teachers, and then recipients are students who had almost no access. And suddenly we're bringing them into a world where they can send these announcements and tell, students what's happening, that in a way that before was literally taking a piece of paper half a mile away into a housing unit that's locked down and getting information to them. So we went to a particular institution, we trained them how to do it, and I encouraged them to do just what I encouraged you right now to do and play around with it, right? Make some announcements, play with them, but make sure that you don't send. And at the time, our settings were not as locked down as they are now. So administrator level settings were available to a larger group. It was the middle of COVID for us, coming out of COVID, and we had a high visibility of our system with our security folks in headquarters in Sacramento. And one of the people that was practicing diligently typed some, I don't want to say unsavory, but maybe some questionable things into a box, and put some things in that box for that announcement that didn't apply and were concerning. And instead of canceling out, they sent it, and they had it marked to send to all users. And within 10 minutes, I got a call from the powers that be telling me that our system had been hacked. Somebody had sent a message about Santa Claus doing something he shouldn't, and it's clearly an incarcerated individual who cracked this already, and we need to shut it down immediately. And so I'm at my computer trying to log into Canvas, find out what's going on, who sent this thing. And my phone rings, and it's the site. And they're telling me, hey, we really didn't mean to do this. We see what we've done. What can we do to fix it? Well, one of the things about our Canvas is you can't delete it. Once it lives forever, because we have a mandate to preserve evidence. So we did our best to mitigate the damage, but that person learned that, sometimes when you put very interesting things in your announcements, you grab the attention of everyone, even people that you don't necessarily want to have the attention of. And it's a joke now at that particular institution going, most of those students have graduated and moved on. But the ones that were around that are still incarcerated at that institution refer to that particular person as Santa Claus, based on their reading of that announcement. So just be careful when we're playing around. Don't send an announcement unless you really honestly need to. All of this is just meant to be practice. We don't have a sandbox that we can kind of lock you up in so that no mistakes are made. But just know that if you send it to a group, they're going to see it. And if you do your job and it's engaging, they're going to read it. All right, so let's talk about announcements. I'm going to go back real quick. Let me go back to that previous page. If you look at my announcements banner that I've copied from my version of Canvas, you see that their information announcement is what I put up, and it's got a green bar on the left-hand side. That's because it's just information. Announcements can be configured in multiple ways. And when I go to the next page, you'll see that this one is orange. This is an alert. So when you're looking at announcements, there are different types of announcements you can make. You can make informational, errors, warnings, questions out to your group, and things that will go on their calendars if you're putting this out through a specific course. Now, global announcements put out as an administrator can't go on calendars, but in specific courses, they can. You're also having the ability to put together a specific audience for your announcements, whether you do that at a global level for all users, at a course level, or at a department level. And so I'm going to go into my own Canvas here. And I'm going to go out here. Oh, I've already got it up, actually, I think. I do not. Okay, let me log back into my Canvas.
And also, if you need me to share my Canvas, I can as well. So just whatever works best.
No worries. So I'm in my specific version of Canvas. This is CDCR. And if you go down in your course, in your list on your admin to your settings tab.
So we're still seeing your OTAN. Are you meaning for us to see the OTAN slides still? Or do you want us to see your Canvas?
See my Canvas.
I know it's tricky. We have to unshare, then reshare, and there might be.
Okay, let me reshare then.
There might be another trick. I don't know it though.
I'm used to Teams, so please forgive. Now can you see it?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So when you're in your version, if you go down to settings, you're in your administrator tab and you go all the way down to your settings, you're going to have at the top a way to send out announcements. And you probably already know this. But if you click on the announcements tab, you're going to be able to see all of the global announcements that have gone out. Excuse me. And you see that in ours, they're mostly green and orange because we have a lot of alerts we need to give people. But they're all set up to go to specific groups of people. So I'm going to play around right now and show you when you put together a new announcement, how it looks. No. All right. So when you go down to the bottom here, I've set up a number of different roles, myself and the other administrators, that allow us to choose who's going to get this particular announcement that we're sending out. Am I going to send it to only my students, only my teachers? Am I going to send it to a specific role that we have put together? And we have them grouped. So we have them grouped by OCE staff, which is our equivalent of headquarters, our post-secondary teachers. And you set up your groups however you want them to be set up, and then select them in here to make sure that only those folks are going to get that announcement. So one of the things that's important is setting that up at the front end, right? You can always go in and set up different groups of folks, but make sure when you're putting it together that the people that you need to speak to, be thoughtful and mindful about the people that you need to speak to in different ways. Give them different groups so that you can select those groups when you're sending out global announcements. Now, remember, I told you there are different types up here, different types of announcements, which you'll select here, errors, warnings, questions, and something that'll go to a calendar. And in this case, we're just going to say, this is just going to be an announcement that we're going to send out informationally. So it's going to have that little green bar on this side. Now, when I'm going to stop sharing, go back to my OTAN. This is going to be a little awkward for me. Like I said, I'm not used to having to go out and in and back.
It's back.
Huh? What's that?
You're back. You're back to OTAN.
Perfect. Okay, so just I wanted you to understand that the different types of announcements will show up differently. It's meant to be eye-catching, so they see a different color. Make sure that you pay attention to the type of information that you're sending, and if you're sending out something that's super duper important that you need to catch their attention, don't send it out informationally, because honestly, they start to see that little green thing, and it's just one of those things that they move past, unless you are a person who has been super mindful about putting together an engaging message. Okay, so how do you create a good announcement? Features. Don't just include text. Make sure that when you're putting this together, you're putting in links, you're putting in information that wants to grab them, that you're putting it out there in a way that has something that's more than just a paragraph that I need to read, especially if I'm a student, because I read a lot of those things. And if my English skills are not fantastic, I get exhausted really easily. So a whole paragraph of information sometimes is, more than I can handle today, especially if it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm a teacher, I've had a really long day, and now you want me to read an essay. In this announcement that you sent, I'm supposed to find all of the information in there that's relevant to me, pick out what is, discard what isn't, and use that information to inform what you want me to do. You're going to lose them if all you're doing is sending out long missives of text. So make it brief, make it to the point, but include some informational features and some fun things that make it more engaging to them. And how you do that is using the rich content editor, which I'm going to show you, embedding some media. We forget there are ways to embed media in an announcement, just as in pretty much anything we do in Canvas. If we're creating a page, we can embed some media. And an announcement is, in some fashion, a different page. So you can attach files, sure, but it's really engaging if you, for example, put in a voice memo, put in a video, use a GIF or a GIF or however you want to call that. Make it something that they want to have a look at. Make them laugh. It's not social media, but there's no rule that says you cannot be an engaging administrator who every now and then throws something out there that just makes your group laugh, right? So here at the bottom, there is it's a coding that I'm going to use here in a minute. And I'm going to show you how to put that into an announcement that will hopefully kind of make you laugh today, but also change some things in your announcement so that it's not just that plain old boring announcement. Okay. Announcement best practices. Let's talk about some of the things that are important. That subject line. Make sure it's to the point and make sure it grabs them. Don't put 20 words in a subject line if all they need to know is that this is about school closure. We're going to be closed on Friday. Don't make it something that they're going to roll past because it's irrelevant. Give them a clear subject line, whether it's a student, whether it's faculty, or whether it's an announcement that goes out through Canvas that's intended for the student's family. Make sure that you're putting those things in there so that if they read it the first time, they know what they're going to be reading. But also if they need to go back and look at it and go through a history of many different announcements that have been sent, that they can find the one they need that relates to the information that they're trying to find. When you're putting the content together, organize it in a way that gives them information in bites. Allow it to be small bites in order that make it clear what you're trying to have them do, what your outcome is, what they're expected to either get back to you or know for the future, or what they're being called to act on. Make sure that your content is put together in a way, and always think about your lowest level learner or your lowest level faculty member who may not be as tech savvy. Put it together for that person, and then anyone else will be able to access the information there. Especially if your school has language learners or folks who continue to struggle with reading, don't make it text heavy. Make it as organized and to the point as possible. Strategic timing is something that's also very, very important. If you send out a rush of announcements on things that aren't happening for a week or two, you're probably going to lose your audience. They're going to forget what you want them to know. They're going to miss deadlines. They're not going to attend PD. They're not going to make it to school events. So just make sure that when you're using Canvas announcements, you take advantage of the scheduler. You can schedule an announcement to go out. I'll show you how to do that when we practice. And you can put it at any date, anytime you want. Just recall that sending those paper newsletters out back in the day, when you'd bring those home, especially when you were probably in elementary school, and you'd bring home a paper to your mom and dad and you'd hand it off to the family, and they'd look at it and they'd go, oh, open house is in a week, and then they forgot because it didn't come out timely to them, and so much happens in life that they'd forgotten by that time. Just share a little thing with you. Again, I'm old, and my own children came up before Canvas was a thing. And my oldest child brought home an announcement about his 8th grade promotion. I came from a school district where we didn't have 8th grade promotions, and my husband at the time the same. And so we didn't see the newsletter because he put it in his backpack and it didn't get to us. And then when it did, we were still talking about something that was a few weeks away, and we almost forgot that he had an 8th grade promotion because it was sent to us in a way that didn't engage us and wasn't relevant time-wise to what we were planning. It wasn't at a time that we expected anything to be happening. But it wasn't because we were bad parents. It was because the way it was sent to us and the way it was communicated to us, it just wasn't in a fashion that met our needs. And that sounds very, very self-centered, but keep in mind that you as an administrator have to meet their needs. That's our job, right? Meet them where they are, bring them to where we need them to be. And if their lives are hectic and you're sending out an announcement that says in 3 weeks we're going to do this, you can bet 48 hours from now that's been filed away in annals of the brain that they may not access for some time. And then that last thing, target your audience. Make sure that your audience is the intended group. Don't send out a PD announcement to the global user group and then find out that your students are wondering what the heck you're talking about because they don't do PD. They've never heard of it. Sorry, my computer keeps going dark. And they don't pay attention to your announcements because they're not for me. Don't ever get yourself into the group think of it's not for me. Try and make these things those engaging practices that are targeted to the people and definitely for you, and definitely for the groups that you intend them to be for.
So Lynn, I just want to let you know we have about 25 minutes.
Okay. I'm going to go into some practice here. And I'm going to go back out to my Canvas. Just going to do some practice. I encourage you all to go into your Canvas as well. You do not have to do exactly what I'm doing. Get out of this, come back into announcements, and I'm going to create a new
Just
announcement.
kidding. You have almost an hour. It's not till 10:30.
Oh,
Did I
that's
just panic you?
You did. I was like, I thought this was longer.
Yeah, it
I'm
is
going
longer.
to talk
Hello.
also in a way that doesn't keep you all for too long and get boring. But let's go out and create a new announcement back here. Again, I'm going to put in here. And if you're working along with me, I'm going to just do an information announcement. You can do whatever works for you. But I'm going to go
Not
in here.
seeing your Canvas yet?
Oh, goodness. See,
No, it really is a pain, the sharing.
all right. Now you should see it.
We do. Hooray. It's got it.
Okay. My approach to this is to always set the stage before I do the content. That way I'm mindful about who I'm talking to and talking about before I get there. So I always give it a good title. I give it the type of announcement that I want to send out. And then I select my audience and I go down here and maybe I'm only going to send it to a specific staff group. I select them. I want everybody in that group to see it. So I'm not going to do it by specific role. This is going to go out to all headquarters. What do I want to do in terms of timing? Well, this is going to be a welcome to 2025. Probably not going to be very effective if my teachers came back on Monday and I'm welcoming them to 2025 2 weeks from Monday. So I'm going to send this tomorrow just because it's important that they know that I'm happy they're back. I can even say, let's send it at 7 a.m. If you're going along with me and you're practicing in your own Canvas, you can choose to do this in whatever order you'd like. Again, I just like to set the stage. I like to be mindful. Maybe it's because of that, that backwards planning that came from my English days, and that I like to know my outcomes before I actually do my content. But I'm doing this in a way that allows me to say, okay, on Friday at 7 in the morning, my staff in headquarters is going to come in and they're going to see this announcement welcoming them back to work. Do I want them to keep seeing it? Probably not. So let's just do that for one day and let's close it off at 5 p.m. so they don't get this in their face all the time, just this one message, right? So I'm going to go up here. I'm going to give it some to tell them we're going to have a staff meeting. So, be prepared. But it's boring. You can send it out just like that. It's boring. It's probably not going to engage anybody. They're probably not going to be too excited about the fact that I'm asking them to come and be back here and do all the things that they've been doing forever. So I'm going to go ahead and maybe throw in an audio recording that I've made. So what you do to do that is here on your toolbar, you've got some things like you would have in any of your Canvas pages. And one of those is a way to upload media. You can recordings, videos. Videos are fun. Now imagine your face going out talking to everybody in an announcement that they can't get away from. Just put it out there. The media is fun. You can put pretty much anything in here that you want. I have a recording that I did that I uploaded into my files section. And if you're not sure how to get to your files section, recall that it's out here under your account. If you click on your account and go to files, I'm not going to do that to get us off this page, but you can upload media, and I've uploaded a recording. So I'm just going to select that. It's going to put that into my announcement. I'm going to move this thing. I'm going to center align it. I didn't put myself together here very well, but it's going to be just a little audio, right? Let's see if it plays. Good morning, administrators. It's a great day to learn something about Canvas. It does play, so I'm good. It's going to go out to my group that I want it to go to. And if I wanted to do some audio options, for example, I have groups of folks who speak a different language. My primary language is people at my school who need it subtitled in Spanish, for example. I can go out here and I can actually subtitle my audio file to be in whatever language I want it to be to reach the people that I need to reach. So that is another way that you can make sure that all of your groups are accessing the information they need in a way that they need it. You can also put links to external files in here. You can put links to things that are not in Canvas. I can't show you that because we don't allow external links in CDCR, but just know that that is an option. You can also put images in here, so just static pictures. The one fun thing you can also do is you can put animated files in here. So if we are not having a great day with our computer, for example, are you still seeing my canvas?
Yes. Yes, it's great. I
Okay.
love all these examples.
I can insert it's a media file that will show up and show you when I send this message, whatever GIF I decided. And this one just happens to be, I don't think you can see it. It happens to be a, a little fluff ball beating up a computer. It's just something that I picked that I thought was fun. Now, one of the ways that you can make this more interesting, right now it's not interesting, but put borders, put colors, change the background to be something that speaks to specifically you as an administrator putting out information to your staff. And the way you do that is by using the rich text editor. So if you go down here and you click on the HTML editor, you're going to have, there's that media that's going to be embedded in my message. But you can also include a change to the background color, which I'm going to grab out of my, it's like I've put this in the PowerPoint for you all to use.
Unfortunately, I don't have it to copy for you and put in chat. So people will get it at the end, Lynn?
Yes.
Okay, I just don't want anyone to...
Yeah, it's in the PowerPoint. I apologize. Again,
No need for apologizing. You're doing great.
I'm used to using Teams. So the way we do things is a little different. And I could have just copied it right into the chat for you. But this should do. Now you should see my background is pink.
That's so cool. I've never seen that.
And if you go here, this code that I gave you, the reason I gave you the code is because if you click into the code and you want to change just the color, okay? If you start typing things in here, it gives you all the colors that it can do. It can do tons. I don't know why you'd ever want to make a salmon one, but okay. But you can type in here pretty much anything you want. And then this dotted black is a border that I've asked. I can tell it I want it to be a 5 pixel, and I can say solid black border. And then if I go back here and look at my message, now I have a solid black border and a very light colored background that make my message something that they will know is from me, right? I can put in whatever I want to put in here. But I don't know why that's not showing up. But these are the ways that you can engage them, right? With an audio
You
file.
have to update, you have to save it and update it before it'll show, I think.
Oh, yes, thank you. That's probably why. So when you save your announcement, that animated GIF or GIF, depending upon how you pronounce it, will show up. So your announcements should be something. You can change the font. You can make it whatever you want to make it. It's not something that just has to be that standard, boring. It looks like everything else that you send out. Change whatever you want to change, right? Make it yours. And don't be worried about being formal all the time. We do a lot of formal communication in our work, and it's nice to have this space that you can just send something out that really reflects you as an administrator. Start letting your personality kind of come out a little bit when you use this. And if I get everybody in my OCE staff gets a message from me that's maybe just, hey, it's Monday and I just want to wish you guys, a great week. And I throw that out there in an audio file, they're going to have a different perception of you as an administrator and a different relationship with you after time, because it's not just reading your words, right? You're taking the time to put something together that doesn't replace your face-to-face one-on-one time, but really makes them aware that you're taking the opportunity to use all of your tools to be that person that they need you to be, the school leader, the instructional leader. We get really wrapped up in instructional leader and only being the person that's there to do the most rigorous things that we can possibly do and hold our teachers to high standards. And we often forget that they're folks too, and they have stress. And sometimes if you're having just a day and you just want to send something funny out, who cares if that funny thing is an image of a cat dancing and it just happens to be something that breaks the tension, particularly at times of the year when things are stressful. Use this to do that. Use Canvas to be that, and organize your announcements in ways that kind of speak to who you are. You have enough memos, right? You have enough formal paperwork. Use this in a way that says who you are and how you want to be seen and the culture that you want to put together at your school. So again, I'm not going to send this. If I did, it would go out to all of the users in the OCE staff group, and they would get an email saying that they have an announcement to go out and see. If they choose to turn those announcements off, they'll still see it when they log in at the very top of their Canvas. They can't get away from it, and it'll be right there at the top. And then they can choose to dismiss it, or they can choose to have a look at it. And if you've put it together in a way that is engaging, and if you keep them guessing a little bit on what you put in there, they're going to look at it and they're going to understand that you need them to know some information, or you just want them to know that you're there. It may seem a little touchy-feely to you to be that kind of an administrator, and if that's not you, that's fine. But this is just a way that you can sort of put a little of who you are out there for your staff. And I'm going to go ahead and cancel this because I certainly don't want anybody in my institutional security to get a hold of me and ask me why I'm putting out an announcement welcoming everybody to 2025. Okay. I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint now.
I love these great ideas, Lynn. I've never seen that with the border. I love it.
Yeah, it's a neat
Can't
little
wait to use it.
I've talked for quite a while now. Is there anyone else that wants to contribute some things that you've done or that you've used in doing announcements, specific tips, tricks, things that you do at your school that maybe would help us? Can you hear me?
For some reason, you were muted.
Yeah, I saw that pop up.
What's going on?
Is there anything in the chat or anything anyone wants to contribute so I can take a break here and stop having you listen to my voice and listen to some others?
Share with us what good ideas do you have? Just go ahead and unmute. Or anything that Lynn's brought up that, oh, all good. That's so funny. Anyone want to share anything they've liked so far?
Okay, well, we'll go on. Remember,
Got some shy people today.
that's okay. No worries. I really honestly want to know if you've done some things that I'm not including, or if you've tried any of these things, kind of what your outcome has been. So please don't be shy. Throw it into the chat. If you have feelings about, being less formal with your staff, being more formal with your staff, share those things. We all learn from one another. We're not all approaching our schools the same way. Our school cultures aren't the same, and what we're trying to develop. I know that there are some of us that really enjoy, being in adult ed because our students are on a level that we connect with in a different way than when we had, younger students as our audience, people that want to connect with their staff in a different way. So that's just how I approach Canvas. I have to be really careful in my environment because, again, sending some of the things that I would be able to send if I were at a school or it's, not as secure and not as locked down. So I'm a little stifled. So what you're seeing here too is a lot of my, oh, do these things because I can't. I can't send animated jokes that, they're not offensive, but so, I can't send like a guy beating on a computer. It doesn't work for my audience, but it might for yours. So just, feel free, make it work for you, make it something that really resonates with your staff. I guarantee you this is a way that the announcements in particular, a way to really change the tone of how Canvas is viewed. Um, let's step back in the day. Let's talk about that when we were in elementary school or when I was, and you would walk up to the front of the school and there were those announcement boards, right? And they had the big black letters that you stuck on there one by one. And they said, open house night, this date. And it was just one of those things that you walked past every day and it just was there. And that's how you got your information. And then we moved farther and they became digital and the boards were able to be dynamic and change. People still look at Canvas in very much that same way. They log in, there's a bunch of stuff on the front page. It's like walking up to school. I'm here for school. I'm not here for all that extra. But that extra is important and it's important to engaging your learners. And I want to shift the perception of Canvas as into something that's really dynamic and really a way for you to grab your audience as opposed to just the learners come in or the faculty come in and they click on their dashboard and they click on the course they need to be in. And it's this rote thing that they do all the time. As soon as school becomes boring, we begin to lose our audience. It doesn't matter if it's our faculty or our students. And so using Canvas in a way that engages them and helps them feel like they've arrived at a space that matters rather than a space that's simply task driven. This communication style that I'm presenting to you is one way to do that. All right, so let's move on to the next thing, which is the discussion boards. Most of the time, whether you've been a student in the past 2 decades now almost, or just faculty, most of the time discussion boards are misused. I'm just going to throw that out there. They've become this thing that is a task. It's a drain for both staff and students. And staff, most of our administrators don't use them with their staff, but I'm hoping to tell you why you should and why it can be really powerful. With a student, faculty will post, here's a fact or here's a question, respond. And they require that a student respond in so many words and it has to be by this date. And then they have to respond to 2 of their peers and engage their peers. And it just becomes this task that really doesn't add anything to what the student is learning, nor does it add to what the teacher knows about what the students have learned. And you as an administrator probably haven't used a discussion board at all in your work. And I encourage you to consider how it can be used for the things that are listed here. Faculty collaboration is one thing that you as an administrator can really drive forward by using some discussion boards. Whether you have your own administrator shell or you have PLC shells or however you set them up, or you set up your administrator shell with a discussion that just goes to a specific PLC and that's the only group that can see it. There are many ways you can set it up, but I encourage you to have your faculty talk to one another. In our situations, hugely difficult, as I pointed out, for our faculty to communicate with every group that they would need to communicate with to understand who they work with. They may see 6 teachers on a regular basis. They may talk to those 6 teachers on a regular basis, but the rest of the faculty, the other 34, are equal, to them, and they do the same work and they encounter the same problems, and they never have a chance to really discuss it. Much like many of your adult schools, we don't have 8 classrooms that teach the same thing. We have maybe 1 or 2 faculty. And in my case at my prison, we had 3 small schools that each had 1 level, 1 teacher, and really no ability to create those connections. So when people were coming and going, they were feeling much like they were on islands, and creating some space for them to collaborate is really important. And a discussion board can do that. Whether you spur it with a question or you put out a suggestion, your teachers can engage one another in some back and forth that's visible to you as an administrator and provides some really, really good data. Uh, Informal conversations on a discussion board, if you put up a teaser question or a topic that you want them to talk about, can really help you understand not only the tone and tenor of how they communicate with one another, but maybe some gaps in what they do or don't know. If you see common questions coming up and they don't know about these specific elements or what am I supposed to do here, that can clue you in that this is a space that needs some professional learning. And hey, maybe I should spend some time in either a staff meeting or a targeted PD to address the concerns that are coming up. You don't have to ask them straight up, what PD do you want? But you can gauge from the data that you get from their interactions where you might need to provide some more guidance. Also, maybe where you might need to be as an administrator in classrooms more helping teachers out. Um, get your faculty to talk and share. They can attach files. They can attach many of the same things that we've talked about in the announcements can be attached in discussion boards. And so if they don't see each other on a regular basis, maybe some teach during the day, some teach in the evening, they can share files. They can, hey, I have this great graphic organizer and that would work for what you just said. Or I'd really like to create something with you that we can, cross collaboratively put together a lesson and let's both design it together. Get them talking and use the discussion board as a way for you to be there without being there. The driver of PLCs is that we want them to be teacher led, right? They should be teacher led, teacher specific, and really address the needs that they have in their own learning communities. And administrators aren't supposed to be the drivers. So this is one way that you can see kind of what they're talking about, not in a gotcha way, but really in a way that sets you up to be the resource that they need. Many times they'll tell one another things and talk about things that they wouldn't necessarily bring up to you, or in a way that, says what they need without saying what they need. So the discussion board can be that space for them. It can also be a way for you to engage your entire school community. Yes, there are ways to set up discussion boards if you've invited everybody to your shelf, for example, that allow teachers and students to talk about different things and talk to one another. Students come to school and they talk to their teacher, and sometimes they talk to you, and then they go home. And adult learners don't necessarily engage with their school community because they've got other responsibilities and other things going on. But if you set up discussion boards that allow them to talk about things that don't just relate to their class, for example, you can set up a discussion board that allows some of your vocational teachers that teach things that might be of interest to students to talk about their programs and put information out there, and then get some interaction with students who are maybe looking at different programs or just finishing up some adult basic ed and then want to go into a vocational program, and they can learn about it in a safe space that isn't threatening, that they're getting some information from a teacher, that they don't have to walk up to that teacher and say, I want to know about this. I've got a pamphlet, tell me more. They can go through the discussion board and ask questions and get to know an instructor in a way they might not be able to. One of the least fun uses, but necessary, and discussion boards can actually support respectful conversation, is when you're talking about school policies. And as an administrator, getting that buy-in happens when you give everybody ownership because they've had input. And a discussion board can be a way to put something out there and get input from your faculty, get input from whichever groups. Maybe you want community groups to have some that are in your Canvas to have an opportunity to make a comment or input on some of the policies you're considering, and it'll give you the data. It gives you a way to track it, have a look at what people have had to say, ponder if there are themes, regroup maybe if you need to change the approach that you're taking. A discussion board can be that space to do that. Now, you can structure a discussion board in a number of ways. For instance, not allowing them, as we do, not allowing them to delete comments, that encourages thoughtful input and not just something that's going to be, I'm coming at my administrator because they don't like this. If they know it lives forever, they tend to be a little bit more careful in the way they're responding, and a policy discussion can get contentious. So I encourage you to use a discussion board for that kind of thing. And then finally, for professional development. If you have slideshows or things that you've asked them to do, and you've created a module of information in Canvas, and you're doing a professional development course that's entirely facilitated through Canvas, I really encourage you to use the discussion boards both for the content of the professional learning and that course end information that you want, that feedback that you want. And I'm not talking about just those surveys. Did you benefit? What did you find most interesting? Use that discussion board to generate some meaningful conversation about what they learned, how they're using it in their classroom, and what the extension is. Where do we go from here? Get those conversations going. We all know that it's easy to be a keyboard warrior, and you will get faculty who use that space as a space to complain. And you can either view that as, well, I don't want that to be a public complaint and I don't want to provide them a forum for that. Or you can view that, as I do, as data. It's data about how I presented what I just presented, whether it's a policy or PD or collaboration. It's data about that teacher. Is there something I need to do to engage that teacher so that the negative views of what we're doing can be mitigated and turn that teacher's, tide to be more of a supporter than a detractor? And you can simply view it as, maybe their colleagues are also getting data from this as well. So just look at your discussion boards, which are very public spaces, as data repositories. They are what you make them, right? You can choose to walk away from this as an administrator and say, well, I don't want to be publicly criticized and I'm not going to do that. Or you can choose to say, that's a space for me to really get an idea of what's going on. They're not going to say it to my face because, again, keyboard warrior is much easier, but they might make a post. And if I really look at the post on the discussion board and I really think about where it came from, what space in that teacher did it come from, I'm going to learn something about that teacher and about my administration. How are the teachers perceiving me, and what do I need to do to get those folks who are the last adopters on board with what I want to do? I'm going to stop talking again real quick. Are there any questions or any comments about discussion boards?
None in the chat, Lynn.
Perfect. Okay. So because as an administrator, you might not use discussion boards as often, I just really quickly wanted to go over some of the features of a discussion board and how you can use these features to structure and control the conversation that's happening in a discussion board. Now, as I mentioned, a discussion board is a public space. And by public, I mean public to whoever you give access. As I gave access in my announcement to specific groups, I can do the same with my discussion board. So if I wanted to create a discussion board that was unique to the OCE grouping, I could put it out there. It could be in my shell, and the only people that would have access to it would be those people who are associated with my district level group in my case. I can set it up to be either a threaded or a non-threaded discussion. And by that, what I mean is I can put a topic out there and I can allow replies. So that's me asking you a question and you giving me a response. That doesn't allow anyone else to respond to you. They can only respond to me. So we're not going to have any nesting and any dynamic conversation. This is simply a two-way communication. I say and you respond. That's just a non-threaded discussion. Now, a threaded discussion is a little bit different.
Are you in your Canvas, Lynn, or you still want us to be on OTAN?
I'm still on OTAN. I'll go to my, I'm trying to go back and forth.
Just checking. I'm following you on my Canvas too, so I was just checking. Okay.
No worries. I'll go out to my Canvas when we go to the practice page, but it wasn't working to go back and forth. So when we're talking about threaded discussions, we're talking about users being able to talk to one another. And in my little graphic here, you see the two guys doing the high five with one another. And that's more of a threaded discussion. It's not just this hierarchical you and I talk. It's you and I and another user who may talk to you or may talk to me. And we have a nesting of responses. So I say something, you respond, faculty member Smith responds to you, you respond back, and you begin a conversation that may be a subset of what I asked or may take it in an entirely different direction. Threaded discussions are really neat because they allow you as an administrator, again, to have data, right? I asked, what curriculum are you using and how many supplemental materials are you using with that? And this discussion went from Teacher Jones telling me I never use the curriculum and I use all supplemental materials to, you know, Professor Sanchez saying, what supplementals do you use? And then Professor Jones giving information back about those supplementals. And suddenly I know more than I knew. And I can say, hey, okay, so these are great. Everyone would benefit. Let's go and talk to that teacher. And maybe that teacher wants to give a short PD session on some of the supplemental materials that they use. And your threaded discussions really give you more targeted data and more targeted information, and they allow a more intimate conversation than may happen with just putting up a question and wanting a one-on-one response. Um, there are appropriate times to do both types of discussions, and so it's just important that you understand that they both exist. And that if you just want responses, a threaded discussion may get you into the weeds. So when you're putting it together, just be very careful and mindful about how you structure your discussions. Now, moderating a discussion board. There are moderation tools, but they are not what they would be in a more dynamic situation. Canvas has a purpose. It's a learning management system, so some of the things are limited. Your moderation tools, basically, as the person who creates the discussion board, are limited to deleting a comment or muting a user and restricting what can be said, creating a discussion that allows them to either delete or not delete what they're putting in there. Can they reply to all? Can they only reply to some? So just your moderation tools allow you to keep the conversation on track, but they're not going to allow you to prevent everything that could go wrong. So yes, are there going to be times when you're going to put up a topic that's sensitive to a student group or a user group or a specific person, and they're possibly going to have something to say that doesn't fit with what you are hoping to achieve? That's going to happen. Can you delete it? Yes. Should you? In some cases, yes, and in some cases, no. But what will you learn from that? Again, where do you need to have conversations? What did I just learn when that teacher popped off with something that took me by surprise? I learned that I probably need to walk out and have a conversation and find out what's going on. Again, you look at this and you moderate how your school culture dictates and how you want your school to be perceived. Do you want to be perceived as someone who will silence people if they say something that doesn't go along with the narrative? Or are you someone who's going to say, that's a good point, and I'd really like to discuss that with you. Let's schedule a time to get together. When you do that, you're sending a message not only to that person, but to your entire school community that you're not reactive, that you're thoughtful, right? You've just demonstrated to everyone on that discussion that you're thoughtful about what's being said to you, and you're not going to put someone on blast, even if they put you on blast. You're going to be mindful, you're going to walk out, you're going to have a conversation, and however that resolves, maybe it's shared with everyone, maybe it's not. But you as an administrator have been mindful, and you're demonstrating to your groups in a very public way that you're listening, right? And that comes down to that grouping options. Be mindful about who you're inviting to the groups and how you're creating your groups when you're putting discussions together, whether it's a section of people, an entire group of faculty, a specific user set. Group people in ways that are going to receive the message as you intended and provide the meaningful feedback that you'd like to generate through that discussion board. Not every user has the same perspective. Groups of people see things differently, necessarily so. And so if you intend to get some feedback on a forklift program that you've got going on, but you've asked the culinary people, they're probably not going to engage in the same kind of discussion that you expect to happen. Whereas if you're asking all of your vocational teachers, questions that relate to the vocational program as a whole, you will. So just keep that in mind when you're putting together your groups. That goes for your announcements as well. Just be mindful of who you're talking to and the message that you're asking for them. Excuse me. And then one final comment on the notification settings, which I touched on before. They will get emails, and a discussion board can get pretty busy, and your users will get email if they've subscribed to a discussion board that says every time there is a comment posted. Now, again, that can get overwhelming and they can turn it off. And some of them will, but those go directly to their email so that they know, hey, log in and have a look. But if you're structuring these to be engaging and meaningful to the audiences, if your groups are set up in the right way, if your discussion is moderated to make sure it stays on track, you're not going to have as many people that ignore the discussion boards and don't come back to them. In the beginning, in my instance, in the beginning of using discussion boards, we had very little interaction. I attribute that to the fact that both our faculty and our students are in a situation where the less you talk, the less trouble can occur. We didn't grow a lot. We didn't expand what we thought of as appropriate user tools. We didn't look at our instruction in a way that we should have. And I'm not saying that we're perfect now, but our population has become much more vocal in a constructive way than they were before. Faculty at a school, for example, one of our prisons has an administrator who set up a shell. They use their discussion boards for sharing information and getting ideas and feedback. And in the beginning, it was a lot of complaining, right? It was a lot of, we can't, we don't, they won't allow us. Students, feedback to teachers, very basic, we can't get there, we can't do this. Now it's a lot more not peer-to-peer with students to teachers, but respectful and constructive. And amongst the teachers coming to the faculty, a huge shift for that school. They're getting feedback, they're getting input, they're getting conversation. Teachers are coming up with ideas, brainstorming outside the box, putting it out there on the discussion board, and then suddenly the idea grows, right? And you'll have the administrator who gets on there and says, well, we can't do that, but how about if we tried this? And that, bringing together the minds where it's so much more powerful than if you're just the administrator on the hill trying to make all of the decisions with the limited resources that you've been given. Leverage what you have and use your discussion boards to take the intelligence that you have in your community and the different groups that you have and really expand upon it and get that synergy going, because people talking is an asset that is free and oftentimes produces results that we never could have imagined. And in the case of CDCR, I mean, we've gone from limiting people to who they can talk to and not allowing them to talk to one another to now we allow students to anonymously talk to one another in some of our programs. Now that was unheard of before. And in a discussion board, that's the last thing I'll put with the notifications, with settings, is that you can choose to allow posters to post anonymously. As an administrator, that's a huge level of trust. You don't know who's coming at you, right? You don't know who's going to say what. And think about it in terms of my population, in that we have people who've committed crimes that may say things they shouldn't. Now, the safety net is, as an administrator, you can always go on and see who made the posts. You can find out who did that post at what time. But it's a huge level of trust on your part, and they perceive it also as you accepting that they're going to remain respectful, that they're going to remain constructive. And in our case, we have had very respectful discourse, very respectful suggestions from anonymous discussion boards that we put up, particularly when they're sensitive topics. If there's something that we want to know, but somebody feels they may be, held to task for saying something that doesn't go along with their narrative, putting together an anonymous discussion board can allow you that feedback that would come from anonymous surveys or anonymous means of, those old boxes where you put suggestions in. Your discussion board can be that if you put it up as anonymous. But I caution you from doing that in the beginning, just because it's that keyboard warrior mentality. If you don't know who I am, I can say whatever I want. You need to build the trust. You need to use your discussion boards for some time before you put that amount of relationship trust out with the populations that don't know how you're going to use this information. So anonymous boards are great, but they have their limitations. Does anyone have any experience with using anonymous boards with your faculty? I'm going to take that as a no. Try it out. If once you develop some trust, try it out. You're going to get information as an administrator that you'll be able to use. It's all data, good or bad, it's all data. Okay. All right. So again, when you're looking at discussion boards, how do you make an effective discussion board? I've got a little screenshot here of something that I really liked. I like the prompt. Choose one of the following prompts based on what we've learned so far about Canvas. You're not just giving them one thing to respond to, you're giving them options. If they've got nothing to say about item one, maybe two or three resonates with them, but I'm giving them options. So what I've done is set up some clear guidelines for what I expect for them, right? I've also told them I want them to reply to each other. So this is a threaded discussion, but I've given them the parameters. I'm expected to answer these questions, to talk to my fellow group members, and to make it constructive. Moderate carefully. I would be very, very careful with deleting things, as I've mentioned before, but don't be afraid to go in there and redirect the conversation. If somebody's going off on a tangent that doesn't help you achieve the goal you need, moderate it and say, that's really interesting, but what about, how do you think about, and just bring them back into the fold and get them back on task. No problem there. Will this take time? Yes, discussion boards will take your time. Moderating them appropriately is going to give you some really good data. Track the engagement of the people that are on the discussion board. When you go into your new analytics tab in Canvas, you can run reports that will show you tracking of who's been on what pages, and you can go in and see who's engaging in the discussion board and how many times have they been on there. You don't have to pick through every response, but you can go into new analytics and into reports and see all of the engagement so that you can say, well, my discussion board fell flat. With this group of people, but not this one. Or, I've got 500 responses and I need to figure out who my biggest, responder is, who's having the most to say. And I can go look at that person's responses and see what's engaging them so much. And then again, managing the responses. If you choose to allow them to delete, if you choose to allow them to respond before they've posted something, all of those are settings in the discussion board that you as an administrator can control. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. I think I'm going to just do a real quick show of a discussion board. We're coming to the end and I want to give people time to have questions or ask what they, things that I may have glossed over. We did not get to inbox. I will push that to the next part 2 of this training. But real quick, I'm just going to go out here and show you guys. Let me go to the proper one. Tell me when you can see my screen. Can you see my screen? Okay, I think you can see my screen. This is a nested discussion board that this professor set up. This is an older one for a class. It's not in session anymore, so I use this one. But he set up just the very basics, how to communicate with him. He's very clear that in CDCR, we don't necessarily have the ability to communicate with each other. So he set this up just for questions, comments, or concerns. Interestingly, he set it up as a nested discussion board, which we can go down here and see that his students are able to respond to one another. And when it says replies, you can see that they reply, he replies to them, and they have individual conversations that aren't just related to the initial question that he asked. Now, if I, as an administrator, don't like any of these, I can edit them, I can delete them, I can go back up to the topic. I have all of the options in here that allow me to moderate this discussion board in a way that, depends upon my style. How do I want to moderate it? Do I really want to just go in and delete something, or do I want to be mindful and say, maybe I don't necessarily need to do that. And let me go out to another discussion board here. So I'm going to go to the settings for discussions. And so in mine, you just go click discussions, and I'm going to click add discussion to show you all those settings that we talked about. I wanted to do this kind of back and forth between the PowerPoint and my session of Canvas. But again, I'm not used to Zoom, so I'm still learning that. Now, here again, this looks a lot like our announcements page, right? You can put anything you want in a discussion board, make it interesting, put that media in there, use that rich text editor that I showed you before to make the background pink or blue or whatever you want to make it. Put in, things that are interactive. If you can use links, but make the discussion something pretty interesting to the folks that you're going to engage, just as if you were writing an announcement. And then, do you want it to be anonymous or not? You can make it, yes, they can choose. I don't want them to have any choice and everything can be hidden or everything can be on. Do I want to thread it? Which means, again, allowing them to respond to one another. Do I want them to have to respond to the topic before they see anything else? If you have podcasts, you can actually enable a podcast feed in your discussion. We don't have that. I've not used it and I didn't use it in K-12. If anybody has, please feel free to speak up. Almost always as an admin, you're not going to grade these things. Liking is fun, so it makes it feel much more like a social media interaction. And what kind of group, right? Is it a group discussion? Who do I want to assign it to? I can type in my groups here. And when do I want them to be able to respond? So it's set up very much like an announcement with these additional pieces in here. But do keep in mind that when you're doing these types of posts and announcements, make them just as engaging and clear as you would make them if they were going out to everyone and if you were doing these on a regular basis. But give them the meaningful information they need in a way that's going to grab them and make them want to engage with you. So we've got about 7 or 8 minutes left. I'm going to go back to my slideshow and show you one last thing here. I'm going to skip all the way to the bottom. At the end of the slideshow that is going to come out for you, there is some resources and support that are going to be important to you. Canvas guides, I'm going to give you a link to those. There is a Canvas admin support network that you can find in the Canvas community. Training materials that exist in Canvas that you can get through the help link. The help documentation, which we call our no help documentation, because as with every bit of, help documentation that comes out from programs, is usually very technical and doesn't give us what we need. And getting into this support network in the community isn't a much better way of finding out what you need to find out. However, let's go here. I've got some things at the end of the PowerPoint that are some settings, discussion boards, resources and support, Canvas guides, and then a link. And all these are live links. So when you get the PowerPoint, they will come to you. And the thing that's on here that I really like is this link. And it's how to have fun with Canvas announcements. It's a YouTube teacher who has quite a few different videos on how to make communications more interesting when you're talking to your populations, what you can do to engage people. She puts in some really fun stuff in her announcements, and she designs them in a way that I think is really engaging and fun. And if you just click on that link when you have this slideshow, you'll be able to find many more of her videos. And there are tons and tons of resources out there. I just put a few here that are related specifically to what we talked about today. So I'm going to stop sharing. And Karen, can I put the link in the chat or can I put the file in the chat? Will it allow me?
Absolutely. I also put in the chat a quick evaluation. Please give us your feedback. It's always important for us to improve and learn with you, and write down what you liked and what you think you could use more of. I also wanted to remind you that part 2 of this Canvas communication is happening Thursday, January 23rd from 9 to 10:30. And I have the link here as well in the chat. So if you'd like to sign up, it's here. Again, we appreciate your time. We know how valuable it is. So
it's not letting me attach, Karen, so I'll send it out in an email to everyone in the group.
We could send it in the roster. So if we wait a few minutes after, I can show you how to do that on the roster, and you can send it out that way right now. Right meow.
Awesome, will do.
Okay. Is there any further ado with any other questions? I just want to thank you so much, Lynn, for taking the time out of your day today to share with us some of the great and dynamic work that you do with communication. I just find it always fun to learn that. So thank you. And we're just going to go ahead and everyone's saying goodbye and thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Have a great day, everyone. Ciao.